Hey everyone, how's it going? Happy New Year and welcome back to the Soundline. Starting off this year with a bang, with another Accuphase video for you. They have released a new integrated amplifier. This is the replacement to the E480, it's now called the E4000. So as we normally do, we're going to go through all the visual differences, show you the front, show you the back. I'll talk a little bit about the specs difference of it, and then possibly something about the sound a little bit later on. Okay, so looking at the front of it, going from left to right like we normally do, as we usually have with Accuphase amplifiers, we've got our lovely big input selector here over on the left hand side, which has got this really nice mechanical clink sound. It feels really good when you use it. Directly below that, our really solid power switch. Got some lovely, great big VU meters, and that's something that they actually did with the E4000. They increased the size of them because they know everyone loves looking at these big VU meters, so they made them a bit bigger over the 480. Directly below, you've got the discrete flap that hides all of your controls. You can tap this wee button just to the right of it that says open, and I really love soft opening action happens where it folds itself down. Going from left to right, you've got your speaker selector, off, A, B, and A plus B, because there are two sets of speaker outlets on the back of the amplifier that you can choose between. Bass and treble control, a tone button which activates the bass and treble control, invert phase, mono mode, compensate. Compensate is kind of like if you want to listen to music at night, it gives it a little bit of a bass boost, I believe around the 100 Hertz frequency. So when you got it down low, you just hit that button and it will just give it a slightly more full range sound, but even though you got the volume down really low. DAC button, which lets you choose between the optical, coaxial, and USB input on the DAC card. MC, MM, which lets you choose between moving coil and moving magnet on the phono card. And a display button, which lets you completely black out the whole unit if you want to listen to music in pitch black. Your balance left to right controls. Main in control, so if you have a home theater processor or a separate preamplifier that you would like to use, and for some reason you just want to use this as a power amplifier only, you've got both balanced and line input mode that allows you to do that. And then recorder off, on, and play, so that will activate the record output of it, meaning you can feed this through to either an audio recorder, tape recorder if you like, or you can use it to run to a separate amplifier with its own volume controls. There's a few different things that you could potentially do with that. Then directly up on the top right hand side, our lovely big volume knob, which feels great to use. It's really solid. And below that, an attenuator button, which reduces the signal down to a really low level, so you can quickly reduce the volume while you're listening if you want to. I use mine quite regularly whenever I'm lowering the needle on my turntable. I just have the attenuator on, prevents me from getting that big loud pop. And then from the remote control, I activate it from the couch. And then a 1/4 inch headphones output, which, having listened to a variety of different Accuphase amplifiers, I can say with pretty good assurance, even though I haven't tested it yet, that will be a very good sounding headphone output. One more thing before we flip it around to the back, something that's different about the front of this compared to the E480, or things that are different. We already talked about the larger VU meters. That is something that they changed. They've also recessed this whole window now into a nice sort of machined recess in the aluminium front panel, whereas on the E480 it was just kind of flush the whole way along. And they brought the gold trim rings around the volume and input selector that they first did on the E5000. When we did the video on the 5000, it was the first time they had done that, and I guessed as to whether or not they would carry that on with the new models. They've done it with the 4000, so I think it's possibly safe to say that all Accuphase integrated amplifiers from now on might now come with this lovely glossy gold trim ring around the selector and volume knob. And the final thing that they did do that was different is they moved the status LEDs for like attenuate and mono and phase and that sort of thing, which activate when you click those buttons. They moved those from being recessed into the aluminium up into the larger dark background window, meaning they're easier to see. And yeah, that's the only real aesthetic differences between the E480 and the E4000. Okay, now looking at the back side of the amplifier, we'll go from left to right as we always do. On the very left-hand side, you've got your two option card slots. This is where, if you want to, you would insert a phono card for a turntable, for moving magnet or moving coil cartridge, or a DAC card, which would give you USB, coaxial SPDIF, or optical input, which you might use for a TV or a music streamer or a music server or something like that. And then we've got tuner, CD, line 1, line 2, and line 3 line level RCA inputs, as well as your recorder play and record output input, so that might be where you put your tape recorder. Pre-out and main-in RCA connections. And then moving down below, we've got our balanced XLR connections. So you've got balanced CD, standard balanced input, that's essentially like balanced CD and balanced 1. And then you've got your balanced XLR pre-out to run to a power amplifier if you like to, and your XLR main-in balanced connections. So that's where you would plug in your 2-channel preamplifier or processor. To the right of that, we have our 8 really high quality speaker connectors. This is speaker A and speaker B. The point of that is really to let you have up to 2 pairs of speakers connected to the amplifier at the same time, which you can switch between. Might be good for A-Bing, or if you've got 2 separate zones. Or what you can use it for is bi-wiring. If you have got, 4 sets of really good speaker wires that you want to use to bi-wire your speakers, you can use speaker A to power the high sections of the speakers and speaker B to power the low sections of the speakers. Okay, so that's the front and the back. I'll quickly go over a couple of specs first, just the main ones, and then we'll talk a little bit about the design changes that they've made to the amplifier to make it better than the 480. So in terms of specs, let's talk power first, because that's usually the most important thing that people want to know about. It is 180 watts continuous into 8 ohms and 260 watts per channel continuously into 4 ohms. So that's actually the exact same as the E480. Hasn't really increased in power, but it has increased in other areas, namely the damping factor. The damping factor has gone up by 33%, so it's gone from 600 up to 800 now on the E4000, which is going to be a good thing. Damping factor, a higher damping factor usually results in a higher speaker drivability. It just gives it more control over speakers and is particularly helpful for larger speakers. It's already a really powerful amplifier, but what it says to us is we're going to be able to power some pretty big speakers off of this thing. Okay, so in terms of design, it is a dual mono amplifier on the inside, like with a lot of Accuphase's integrated amplifiers. So you have a completely separate left and right output stage that are physically separated across the width of the amplifier, as well as the input stage. And each channel also has its own power filter capacitor, a 4000 microfarad filter capacitor. The amplifier has a large, high efficiency toroidal transformer, so really clean power, that's always a plus. And now the main changes that they've made to this are in the AAVA circuit. If you're not aware what that is, it's Accuphase's patented technology that they use in their volume control. It stands for Accuphase Analog Varigain Amplifier. So they use that within the volume control section to make it sound more full range all the way down at low volumes, keep the noise down, a whole variety of things that go on, but it's basically what the end result is with these amplifiers is that it sounds consistent all the way through the volume ranges. A lot of amplifiers you'll find as you get down into the lower volume levels, you'll start to get roll off where the bass dips away and it's not as fast and the treble is a bit softer and more boring and it has that sort of thin sound. Whereas Accuphases are they're kind of known for having that really full range sound all the way through their volume control. And that's what AAVA takes care of. Obviously it's a new amplifier, they can implement some of the newer technologies that they've come up with. They've now added their ANCC circuit to the AAVA circuit. That's a lot of letters, I know. The ANCC is Accuphase's noise and distortion cancelling circuit. So there's a whole extra board in there which is designed purely for cancelling out noise and distortion. The AAVA circuit now has 6 parallel buffer amplifiers, whereas the E480 only had 5. And the buffer amplifiers have been moved to the input board. So they've been moved from the AAVA board, which is all the way up the front here. They've moved it all the way down to by the input jacks. Separating them physically from that AAVA board has resulted in a noise drop, so you get less intermodular distortion. And so a combination of adding that noise and distortion cancelling circuit, as well as the addition of another buffer amplifier and physically moving them to a different place in the amplifier, has resulted in a 20% noise reduction on the E4000 over the E480. So less noise, good. And the other thing that they have done is now in the output section, they now have a 4-fold parallel push-pull transistor arrangement in the output section per channel. So it's the same arrangement as what you find in the P7500, which is their latest and greatest big stereo power amplifier that we've got through in the other room there. It's this change in the output transistor arrangement, having that additional push-pull transistor, that is what contributes to that damping factor increase from 600 up to 800. Okay, so that's kind of like, the real technical wordy stuff out of the way. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about the sound and about the application of this amplifier. So in terms of sound, I unboxed this amplifier today. I haven't had a good chance to listen to it properly yet. What we will probably end up doing is having it here on the shelf with the radio running 24/7 for at least a week. Obviously it takes a few hundred hours to get this thing properly run in, but at least after a week we'll get the main sort of out of the box dry sound that you get with all amplifiers out of the way. So we'll do that, and then we'll hopefully do a video or something on how it sounds later on. Okay, so now moving on to what you would use this amplifier for, what size speakers, what size room, that sort of thing. Well, I mean, it's got gobs of power. Accuphase are always underrating their amplifiers. That's something we always stress when we're talking about these amplifiers, is that when this says it will do 180 watts per channel, that's what Accuphase are guaranteeing it will put out at 8 ohms 24/7. When they say this is 180 watts per channel, in reality it's probably more like 200 watts per channel at 8 ohms. You can power big speakers off of that. Obviously the E5000's got 250 watts guaranteed per channel, so that's even bigger. But you could use this to power decent sized floor speakers, Bowers and Wilkins, large Sonos Fabers, large monitor audios, all day long in decent sized rooms. Probably not large scale hi-fi listening rooms where you've got, upwards of 50 square meters, but any decent size open plan living room that you're going to find here in New Zealand, this will be able to completely fill with sound on any size speaker. We just gave it a bit of a crank up before on the radio, and we didn't even have to get to 30% before it was too loud to listen to. And that's about it, guys. I think that's everything I can possibly say about the 4000 at this stage. Hopefully there'll be more to come in the future. I hope you've found this video informative or enjoyable or something. Leave us a comment in the comment section and tell us what you think of it, what you think of the design, or what amplifier you like the look of. And I'll catch you in the next video. Ka kite anō.